You go to the congressional subcommittees. What exactly, we know Ed Snowden, what he did. What were you blowing the whistle on at the NSA at the time?
3 primary areas. The 9/11 intelligence failures and subsequent cover-up at NSA, which was quite extraordinary. In fact, they kept a whole lot from all the formal investigations, both the congressional investigations, and there was 2 of them that I was a material witness on. Thousands of pages of documents were given to the investigators. I had to do depositions where you're giving oral testimony as well. I also was part of a DOD-IG investigation involving the largest, basically at the time, it was by far the largest contracted program NSA called Trailblazer.
Trailblazer.
And there was requirements for Trailblazer, but most all those requirements had been satisfied by, in part, by another program called ThinThread.
ThinThread. These sound like out of a Jason Bourne movie, by the way.
there is that element to all of this. There is the sort of a Jason Bourne element to all this without all the violence.
And briefly, what is Trailblazer and what is ThinThread?
Well, let's go back just a little bit and then accelerate forward. So the internet age explodes in the 90s. Extraordinary period. Extraordinary, but it's really the digital age had existed for a while, but now the internet had existed for a while, but now there's this rapid transition from the analog era of the information age to the digital age, the digital era. Massive amounts of data, because it's far easier to generate data in the digital space than it was in the analog space. NSA knew, this is right after the Cold War, they actually identified the challenge they faced with the digital age. How do you, it's one thing to collect all this, but how do you make sense of it? All the methods they had used and had been quite successful at back in the 50s and 60s and on well into the 70s and 80s were coming up short. So they knew they had a problem. Well, at NSA, because it's much more of an engineering organization in terms of, hey, we got a problem, let's solve it. Classic, necessity is the mother of invention, that famous phrase in terms of American industry, going back to the industrial age. So sure enough, small teams solved what we refer to as the big data problem. That was ThinThread. It was ready to go well prior to 9/11. But it only cost about, when it was developed, a little over $3 million. But in the year 2000, 2001, there were some preliminaries, just to make a long story short. They awarded a multi-billion-dollar program to SCIC and a bunch of subprimes. Almost $4 billion, or the original program, prior to 9/11. That was their answer. And instead of relying on the ingenuity and the best of American inventiveness, they said, you know what? We're going to buy the solution. We're not going to make it. But the kicker for me, which is still to this day surreal, that solution had already been made and was being rapidly improved. But they decide we're going to go out to industry, kind of like we're going to do in part what was done during World War II with the Manhattan Project. But we're just going to spend a whole boatload of money on some contractors and they'll figure it out. Now you're the contractor. And you can imagine, if your eyes get really big because you're seeing massive amounts of money that you're going to be able to live off of for the next several years.
And Trailblazer?
They never developed anything. Nothing was ever put in the field. And they had shut down. This was right before 9/11, although Trailblazers went on going for a number of years. Because remember, after 9/11, the Congress basically comes to NSA and says, how much money do you need? As if more money was going to be the answer. In most cases, it's never about more money.
What is it about?
It's about solving the problem. Why do you need, but if you want to just make money, yeah, we'll find ways to spend money. So you're incentivized not to solve the problem.
Incentives are not aligned.
No, you're incentivized to keep the money flowing.
Right.
James O'Keefe here in Canada. What do you do when the agencies sworn to protect you are doing bad things in secret? You expose it. You expose it often through a FOIA request, that's Freedom of Information Act. At O'Keefe Academy, O'KeefeMediaGroup.com, we're offering a new course this coming month on how to file FOIA requests, how to get the footage off of the police officers body cameras. We've done that dozens of times, and we'll teach you how to do it. How do you get the course? Subscribe to O'Keefe Media Group. Subscribe to OMG at o'keefemediagroup.com. This is James O'Keefe in Canada, exposing what's happening here. Stay tuned.
What is your price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale.